The Guatemalan Migration Institute reported 132 migrants arrived in Guatemala City after being deported from Mexico on Thursday. The migrants are part of a group of 726 found in a warehouse in the central Mexican state of Tlaxcala. Among the over 700 migrants found on Sunday, there were people from Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, Ecuador, and Nicaragua, the Mexican Migration Institute reported. According to the deported migrants, authorities had told them they were being rescued to later deport them. According to the United Nations, migrants are heading through Mexico to the U.S. to escape violence, economic distress, and the negative impacts of climate change. In late December, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador announced his government would reinforce measures to contain migration. Coastal floods and heavy rains on Saturday affected various cities on the U.S. East Coast, with overflowing rivers leaving vehicles partially submerged and driveways flooded. The winter storm brought snow, ice, and high winds to parts of the U.S. Midwest and Pacific Northwest, knocking out power for hundreds of thousands of homes and businesses on Saturday, with a brutal freeze expected to grip numerous states. Another 13 million people who live near the Atlantic Ocean or large waterways in Virginia north into New England were under the threat of flooding from heavy rains and snows over the past few days. Ron DeSantis, a candidate for the 2024 U.S. Republican presidential nomination, said on Saturday his rivals were running with other agendas in mind, and asserted himself as the only nominee concerned over issues his supporters and their families faced. Speaking to a packed room of supporters in Des Moines, Iowa, DeSantis said ex-U.S. President Donald Trump was campaigning for his issues, while former United Nations Ambassador Nikki Haley was running for the donors' issues. The Florida governor also criticized the current Republican leadership for what he perceived as caving to Democratic demands. DeSantis needs a solid performance in the Iowa caucus on Monday, the first party nominating contest, to save his struggling campaign. Iowa farmer Bill Cowser, a Republican, isn't pleased with the Biden administration. Cowser said President Joe Biden hasn't done enough in the way of trade and agriculture to help farmers and livestock producers in his state. He's leaning towards the Republican frontrunner former President Donald Trump just 2 days before the Iowa Republican presidential caucus.
When Trump was in there, he made a lot of promises and he kept most of them. When we look at what's happened at the last administration, we feel like we, as farmers and livestock producers, gone backwards. When we look at things like free trade.
The 69-year-old farmer and livestock producer looks after more than 5,000 heads of cattle and raises corn and soybeans on his Nevada, Iowa farm, which he recently sold but still looks after. Some of the corn he grows is used for ethanol production. Cowser said the extremes on both ends of the political spectrum frustrate him.
The challenge we've had with the last two elections is the candidates. We go far to the right or we go far to the left. There doesn't seem to be anything in the middle that one size can't fit all anymore. Why do we have two sides of the aisle? Years ago, when I was a kid, it wasn't like that. We always got together and we came together and always came to a common agreement. When I look at, if I had to choose today, I can't choose today because there's so many things that need to happen, and it's 9 months is a long time, but yet it's just around the corner to tomorrow.
Ahead of the Iowa caucus, widely seen as the first test of the presidential election, Trump commands a lead of 51% of voters, ahead of former U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley with 17%, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis with 16% of voters, according to an average of polls by polling analytics website 538. Carlos Ruiz is a quintessential small business owner. Based in Tucson, Arizona, he sells custom-cut raw material to manufacturers, including aircraft and medical device makers. The MBA and metallurgy graduate founded his company 21 years ago and runs it with his wife and 3 other employees. Ruiz, at his 60 years old, began 2023 supporting DeSantis, impressed by his record in Florida and his landslide re-election as governor in 2022, at a time when many Trump-backed Republicans lost. Ruiz likened the indictments to Biden and the Democrats using banana republic tactics against Trump. Ruiz believes that voting Trump back into office will lead to lowered inflation, benefiting business owners. The U.S. aviation regulator on Friday extended the grounding of Boeing 737 MAX 9 airplanes indefinitely and announced it will tighten oversight of Boeing BAON itself after a cabin panel broke off a new jet in mid-flight. As United Airlines and Alaska Airlines canceled flights through Tuesday, the Federal Aviation Administration also said it will require another round of inspections before it will consider putting the jets back in service. Under more stringent supervision, the regulator will audit the Boeing 737 MAX 9 production line and suppliers and consider having an independent entity take over from Boeing certain aspects of certifying the safety of new aircraft that the FAA previously assigned to the plane maker. The FAA said the continued grounding of 171 planes with the same configuration as the one in the incident was for the safety of American travelers. The regulator said Monday the grounding would be lifted once they were inspected. But on Friday, the FAA said 40 of the planes must be re-inspected. Then the agency will review the results and determine if safety is adequate to allow the MAX 9s to resume flying. In 2021, Boeing agreed to pay $6.6 million in penalties after failing to comply with a 2015 safety agreement. The FAA also launched an outside review of Boeing's safety culture in January 2023. Despite extreme Arctic cold sweeping across Iowa, the U.S. state's GOP is still confident voters will show up and support the candidates of their choice at Monday's caucus. The icy weather in the Midwestern state has become a wild card in the crucial contest that could help seal former President Donald Trump's bid to become the Republican nominee to face Democratic President Joe Biden in November's general election.
We've had blizzards before. We've had extreme weather on caucus night, and it certainly is going to be cold. There's no question about that, and we want people to be careful. And but I think we'll see strong turnouts.
Meanwhile, police and emergency responders across Iowa are urging everyone to take proper precautions.
I don't think anybody wants anyone waiting outside because 10 or 15 minutes outside with the sub-zero wind chills that we have, and you're going to have problems. So we're encouraging everybody to just move as fast as you can from your car to the indoor buildings.
Despite the warning from authorities, some Iowans say they are ready and willing to brave the freezing temperatures to caucus for their respective candidate.
Yes, I'm going to go caucus tomorrow, and I'm caucusing for Nikki Haley. And I don't care how cold it is.
From 7 p.m. Central Time on Monday, Iowans will gather for 2 hours in school gymnasiums, bars, and other locations to debate the Republican candidates before ranking them in order of preference. Results are typically announced within a few hours. A large group of Bigg's transient killer whales was spotted in the waters near Seattle on Tuesday.
We've been able to figure out that it's actually a group of whales that were up off Nanaimo, Canada, which is up near Campbell River, which means they've traveled here in 2 days. They are actually completely undetected yesterday until they showed up in Seattle here today.
Brittany Noel, a local whale watching expert and volunteer with the Salish Wildlife Watch, a WhatsApp group that alerts approximately 4,000 people to unique sea life in the Puget Sound region. Noel Expale and the group went completely undetected in the Salish Sea, the larger area of international waters between the United States and Canada, for 3 days. Bigg's killer whales are different than the southern resident killer whales in that they eat marine mammals, whereas the other relies on salmon to survive. With identification help from other members of the Salish Wildlife Watch group, Noel shared that 24 Bigs killer whales in total were spotted traveling together.
Fresh off a campaign victory in Iowa, Donald Trump sat in a New York courtroom on Tuesday to defend himself for a second time against charges that he defamed writer E. Jean Carroll after she accused him of raping her decades ago. Trump watched from the defendant's table as Carroll's lawyer told a jury that the then U.S. president made her life miserable when she went public in 2019 with her story that he had attacked her in a department store dressing room in Manhattan. Carroll is seeking at least $10 million in damages in a civil case that will put the allegations of sexual assault back in the headlines while he pursues the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. Jurors will only consider how much Trump should pay Carroll in damages, not whether the alleged assault took place or whether Trump lied about it afterward. U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan said he expects the trial to last 3 to 5 days. Trump has said he wants to testify.
Canada's planned curbs on work by international students could spark shortages of temporary workers in food services and retail industries as employers are wrestling with a tight labor market and wage inflation in some pockets of the economy. Last month, Canadian Immigration Minister Mark Miller outlined measures, including slashing the number of allowable work hours, to address bottlenecks created by a surge in international students who have been blamed for rental shortages. The government plans to limit international students' weekly work hours to 20 from 40 hours starting in April 2024.
Immigration is essential for Canada. It provides economic, social, and cultural benefits that is necessary in Canada. So we need to have international students coming in. It's a key group working in the industry for us.
International students are also a cash cow for universities as they bring in about $16.4 billion annually. And the government is facing pushback from student associations and advocates over its new proposals.